Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and we are back working on the 32 drag Roadster that we saved out of Ohio last year. So anybody that's hasn't caught up on the videos, we've been working all winter to turn this car around. It was super rotted, kind of janky, all kinds of stuff. So we're trying to, like we've done with a lot of old hot rods, we're trying to make this car safe-ish, as safe as a car like this could be, and solid. So we pretty much got the solid under control. Last video I did the last of the major rot repair. Steve got the last of the floor stuff done with the panel in the trunk, and now we're ready to kind of move back on to some of the engineering, mechanical side of things to get this so that it can move around under its own power here soon. So the one big glaring thing probably from the beginning is the steering on this car. Originally they just had two 8BA, I'm guessing, or flathead rods, I shouldn't say 8BA, flathead rods that were just welded to the frame, essentially, the inside flange of the frame, and that went up, held the steering box, and clamped the steering box in place. There was nothing in the center. That was literally it. Over the years, those welds had broken and things had gotten rotten, and it was almost falling out of the car. So we cut all of that out of the car. Also, I didn't like how low it sat. It almost got you so the steering wheel, you were leaning down over the steering wheel, almost like a school bus driver. So while we're redoing some of this stuff, we figured we'd get it so it's a little more comfortable for somebody to get in and race. So that's where we're at today. So Mike and I, just with some jack stands and ratchet straps, kind of roughly got this sitting where it needs to be. It's pretty comfortable for me. We have plenty of room now. The other problem with the steering box being so low, they actually had the throttle linkage welded to the steering box, which also puts your toe on the steering box and jams you up even more where your legs are kind of in. So by getting the steering box up a little higher, it gets it so that you can have a throttle pedal underneath of the steering box, and you can kind of stretch your legs out a little bit more. Not a lot with how far the setback is, but trying to get it as comfortable or ergonomic as possible with this, with a race car like this. So steering box angle and height is pretty darn good, or close. What I need to do now is we need to roll it back on the lift and try and look at how we can box out something off the frame rails, on the inside of the frame rails. Box something out to get our mounts so that they are basically back where they had them, just something that's thought out a little more. I may still use the idea of using the bottom half of a rod because it fits these Franklin steering boxes perfectly. I've had a bunch of them over the years. We've had a handful of cars that actually had them from when they were built. The track Roadster T-Roadster we had years ago, same thing. It had rods that were just welded and they clamp perfectly to the steering box. It's kind of wild how it all works. So we may use a portion of that, but everything below it, how it's actually held to the frame and the material that's used is going to be a little stronger, hopefully. And yeah, hopefully by the end of this, we'll have something that steers. It's going to be a huge, huge victory on this. So enough talking, let's get busy. All right, let me show you guys what I'm doing here under the car. Hold my flashlight just so you guys can see. So that bracket that is right there, we have partially cut off, but that's the original bracket that was on the car. It was a rod, bottom of a rod was welded to, and it's basically 1/8 inch plate is what they used. So we're gonna use a similar design idea, very simple, but it is gusseted. But I went up to 1/4 inch, and you can see my piece is cut here. There's basically a plate that's sitting on top of that bracket that is 1/4 inch as well, and then we're gonna have another piece sit on top of that inside the vehicle that's gonna hold the steering box. So same kind of idea, just thicker materials, hopefully maybe a little stronger. So I'm gonna tack this piece in the car, then pull the two pieces, which will be welded together out, weld them on the bench, and then we can figure out what we're gonna do for like drilling holes or mounting or whatever. I think we're going to actually bolt the upright into this piece so that it's easy to take everything apart. So that's my thought. And get the MIG welder out, shoot some sparks, and see if we can come up with something here. All right, we figured we'll stop and kind of show you guys what we're doing here. Hopefully rolling in the right direction. So what you see I have clamped here in the vise is a piece of DOM 1.5 inch tubing. This is actually the same stuff that I use for like the support bars in a lot of the cars. We're using that for our stands for our steering box. So originally what they had was a rod, flathead rod just like this, just literally the bottom cut off and welded to the inner flanges of the frame, and that was pretty much what held the steering box. So what we're doing now is I'm sinking, cut off the bottom of the wrist pin area and sunk that down in, and what I'm doing is actually TIG welding it to this riser. So you can see we got one clamped in here. Somebody somewhere along the racing history and hot rodding history figured out that these Franklin steering boxes, the OD of this piece of tubing here is exactly the right size to fit a flathead rod on it and clamp it securely. So it's really great. I've had a handful of these boxes with mounts still on them. We've had the track T and stuff. Anyways, they all had that, so that's what we're going with. So you can see what we have is the 1/4 inch plate on the top here that we're going to weld to that riser. And I have this one actually welded into the tubing pretty good. It's hard to see with the light, but that one's got us established as far as our height we want, which allows me to get our feet underneath of the steering box. And it also, we have our distance from the firewall kind of figured out here. We right now just have a jack stand on that side, so it's sitting a little uphill, but we will address that shortly. So that's what we're doing. I got the other one tacked, the rod tacked to our riser. Next thing we're going to do is actually trace out the circle of where this tubing is sitting, and then we're going to hole saw that 1/4 inch plate and sink the tubing into that, so it just, and then it'll get TIG welded top and bottom so it's as strong as possible. And then we're going to do the same on the other side, and that's where we're going to trim the tubing at the bottom on the other one. We're going to carefully trim it because it's a little long right now, left a little long, so we can get the steering box sitting level. Again, we're doing this way more accurate than back in the day. They would have just eyeballed it, cut the tubing, welded it in, and got it going, but we're trying to make it at least halfway decent. So we got that going. Then the next thing we're going to do after that's all done is I'm going to actually coat a piece of tubing, another piece of 1.5 inches, and have from here straight forward to the firewall, and we'll put a plate on the tubing, and it's going to go against the firewall with another like fish plate on the back side, and that will sandwich the firewall and hold the steering box against the firewall, so that it doesn't move. These towers that we made don't flex forward and back, or as little as we can on them. So the firewall is all tied into the cowl, so we have a lot of strength to that. It is fairly thick aluminum, so by doing all that, everything welded, braced, bolted, hopefully the steering box stays in one spot. It should be a lot more sturdy than it was originally, but that's the plan. Now we're gonna get back to work. All right, so everything is cooled. I just got done MIG welding the brackets or braces underneath to the frame. Used the MIG welder for that, obviously. This I TIG welded just for ease and cleanliness. I did this. So this is a lot of work to make something that looks so darn simple. So it is essentially just a rod shoved in there and welded with some flanges, but to make everything fit and level and even as we can be with all this old stuff, it was a bit of work. So welded everything in and out. Like I mentioned, we hole sawed through these flanges and then put the tubing through, and I surface welded there, and then I also welded on the back side of the flange there, and you can see there. So everything's welded and as strong as it possibly could be with this design. So we're going to bolt that into the body and put our steering box in, and then we're going to sit in and make some engine noises, and then we got to figure out a drag leg. Go there. There. I don't know. Did you maybe use a die grinder on this to like open up the holes?
No, I did it on the other side.
Huh. I don't know why it was tight, but it's a mystery. Alright. 1, 2, 3. Where's the fourth bolt? How am I missing it? Probably should make some way to center, or I should put a tack weld or something on it that you can set it in and you know that it's centered, because right now we don't have that. I mean, given you, once the car's together, you'll probably never.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll jump in and...
Yeah, just do it by feel at the moment.
The camera's under so I can't.
Need a step ladder for this car.
Need to set these on. Real loose. That one started a couple threads. So, I mean, currently it looks like we almost damn near centered it straight away.
I need to go that way a hair.
That was a hair. Yeah, I could see that now, looking at the steering column.
Yeah.
Oop, that might have been...
That actually looks good there.
Yeah. There we go. I mean, that's, you look at, we were worried about the steering column. I mean, it doesn't move at all.
No,
I'm
the only
flexing.
flex you're getting is in this wheel itself. Yeah.
I mean,
that is.
I mean.
Oh yeah, you could do pull-ups on that thing.
I think we're strong enough now.
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, that definitely did the trick.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
I was worried the firewall might flex a little bit, but.
Right. It probably. I mean, I'm sure it does a little bit, but it's
with those doubler plates and everything.
Yeah, it's tied. It's tied into the frame, the cowl, the everything. So
that's good. Now you got all this room. That was the thing that I didn't like.
Yep.
All right, so after a lot of work for what seems like just 2 simple brackets, we have the steering box all mounted in. It is insanely sturdy. I mean, I can rock the whole dang car with it, and nothing's moving. It's very, very sturdy. I'm really happy with how it all came out. Everything's welded into the frame. As far as the bracketry goes there, that's kind of all braced really nicely, and then it bolts down through that, and then it has the bolts, that go through and into the firewall and brace it. So everything's really good. I think it's probably, it's not exactly like what would have been done, but it is something. By keeping those rods that mount it down, that's kind of an old school thing, so it's a little nod to what the car would have had. But we added something where the steering box isn't going to flex every time you move the wheel. While we're trying to keep these cars very nostalgic, we also have progressed as a car community, and we know stuff that is that's a little too dangerous. So having the steering only held by just the narrow ends of 2 flathead rods and a bunch of goober welds, probably not the best scenario. So by doing something like this, there's not much room for failure, especially on a car that's not going to be steering very much. It's just trying to go in a straight line. So it's really just getting the car to the line, getting it off and on and off the trailer, and moving it around like that. But moving at very low speeds is the point when the vehicle has the most steering effort, I would say, or the most strain on it. So we did want to make sure that nothing's going to have any kind of issue whatsoever with bending or braking or any of that. So we need to figure out the drag length. That's the next thing. I had welded up those cowl patches on the front, and there was a little like egg-shaped or football-shaped hole rather that they had for the drag link to go through it. I welded all that up. I did keep that piece, but now it's going to sit a little higher because we moved the steering box up. So what we need to do to make that drag link is we're going to have to remove the firewall again. Luckily, with the way we designed it, the steering box is still pretty darn sturdy, bolting down through the floor and through those brackets that are welded into the frame. So we can kind of keep the steering box where it's at, make a drag link, and kind of run a straight line or a laser line or whatever we need to do up to the wheel and get that all kind of figured out. It's always scary to have to make cowl steering holes or drag link holes in the body or firewall, because you kind of get one shot, and if you're totally wrong on it, you're trying to make the hole look good. I'm sure we're still gonna have to make a trim plate to make it nice, because we're not that good. But we got to do that. Then we're gonna move on to gas pedal or throttle, shifter, clutch. Kind of have all that stuff sort of in my head figured out. The throttle pedal, we have an old like 1930s sewing pedal or something like that we got. Again, just a simple thing. We're gonna run with some combination of that and some forward linkage. Clutch pedal is probably just gonna go right on the clutch shaft, right on the trans instead of having any linkage. Shifter's gonna be very short and somehow heated and bent to fit between your legs, and so that you can shift it and do everything in one shot. So a lot to figure out here. But the steering box was probably my #1 thing since we got this car. I was kind of worried about how are we going to accomplish this, where raise the steering box up so we get foot room, and also keep it strong so that it's not flexing or have even more issues with it moving around when you're trying to steer the car. So I think we accomplished that. So thank you guys for following along. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this newest update on the 32 Roadster drag car. Thanks guys. Catch you later.